And today we're going to be joined by Albert Fox, the Director of Professional Development with the Governor's Office of Early Childhood, and Dr. Amy Hood-Tootin with Western Kentucky University's Early Childhood Training Specialist. And they're going to be talking about how professional development will work with the CECCs.
Hi, Amanda.
Hi.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with everybody about this.
Hello, Amanda. I also appreciate the opportunity.
So as you're thinking about the processes coming up for each CECC out there, we want to start thinking in terms of the big question. If you could do one thing in your community to improve childhood outcomes, what would that be? So today we're going to talk about specifically how professional development will work in that. So we know that for the last couple of years, the Governor's Office of Early Childhood has focused on these three separate outcomes for each community council. As you can see, that first one is high-quality early learning environments, and that's something that we've really kind of pushed, but that is just one outcome that leads to early childhood kindergarten readiness. And some of the things that the councils have done is provide PD and scholarship plans to create a great early childhood workforce and increase participation in STARS to get to that high-quality early learning environment. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is how professional development will increase your abilities to increase your early childhood development. Now I'm going to turn it over to Albert Fox.
Thank you, Amanda. This conversation is really very timely. As you all know, we just did the spring semester for the Kids Now scholarships. And you know, or you may not know, but 200 scholars were not funded. This is the first time that we have not been able to fund all spring applicants who were approved. And we will not have money for summer scholarships. So this is dramatically changing our scholarship program. We have, needless to say, lots of people who are wanting it even still. So this is a time for us to look at strategies to maximize professional development dollars. Every dollar in times such as this must be used strategically to maximize the outcomes for children across the state. As you also know, there's been changes in the traditional PD systems. The RTC used to offer lots of training. They're becoming more focused on the preschool review, teaching ECHRs. The Head Start Training Network is much more focused upon preparing people for their review process. And then also we've had changes in our resource and referral system. And we can look at this from a negative standpoint saying, oh, this is all very, very bad. But on the other hand, as our national leaders in early care and education have pretty much emphasized that the three silos that we have built independently, it's time for that to start coming together and looking at a common childhood professional development program. And this gives us, we're fortunate in Kentucky because we do have community early childhood councils, and we have all three of those silos, as we used to refer to them 20 years ago, coming together and working as a community toward that system. Amy?
Yes, Albert, that reduction of funds, I think, is bittersweet for us. To know that early care and education is being recognized and everybody's understanding the need for the education piece. But on the other hand, money's running short. So we always have to think about how can we work together. And you're absolutely right. Those community early childhood councils can bring together those silos and even some other silos that you didn't even mention, I think, that's your community levels to help enhance the professional development opportunities in your area. Some of the examples that we have seen across the state that councils have done already or are planning to do with future funding would be to actually, now that the scholarship money is dwindling, then possibly there might be opportunities for community early childhood councils to use some of the council funds as scholarships for students, remembering that it can't be duplicating services, but if there's no money to duplicate, then there might be some way that those councils can assist and help getting students back into school or at least keeping on track. Some of the other opportunities for professional development we've seen, of course, are offering training days. Some people refer to those as Super Saturdays. Sometimes they're just a training workshop that might offer one track at a time, but the councils are able to fund those opportunities for folks to come together in child care, in the public preschool programs, even the families and other educators in your area who want to know more about activities for children, you know, coming together for those training days. In addition to that, in order to make sure people get what they need, some councils have actually offered stipends to the programs, let's say to child care centers, who may want to register for a local training that's nearby. Maybe those funds are running short that you mentioned, and making sure that everybody gets their hours in or above their hours in. People could use stipends to help reimburse registration training fees and those sorts of things. Again, that's going to vary across the state because we do have so many different types of physical agents out there, but these are things that are, you know, things to think about, thinking outside of the box for professional development. That way people get what they need, whether it's local or maybe a state or national event they could attend. One of the things that's really important, and Albert, I know we'll talk about this a little bit later on, but it's how we design that training, how we align the content of the training for CDA, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little while. And finally, thinking about and using the early childhood profiles that we will soon be seeing and focus our training and other professional development activities on those needs. The slide that you're looking at now is a draft of what our early childhood profiles will look like when they are released in the relatively near future. I'm just going to take a few minutes to update everyone on where we are what we're talking about with kindergarten readiness and these early childhood profiles. The first and foremost thing that I want everybody to remember when we talk about kindergarten readiness screeners is that every child is eligible for kindergarten once they meet that age requirement. It's the age requirement. Schools must be ready to meet the needs of any eligible child or student where they are when they come to us. So just kind of making sure everybody's on the same page, let me tell you a little bit about where we are now. As you all know, you've been hearing this in the upcoming school year, 2013 and 14 school year, the Brigance Kindergarten Screener will be used by all state-run kindergarten programs. Now, there's more information that you can seek out in the Kentucky Administrative Regulations, which provides guidance and administration and the use of the data in this screener. But in a nutshell, this is something that's going to be used with all state-run schools in this next school year, and the time in which they are administered is looking a little bit different than what a lot of school systems are used to. The screener must be administered within 15 days before the children attend their first instructional day, and no later than the 30th instructional day. And again, that's a change for many systems in our area where they plan screening days in April or May or during the summer. The data that we're gathering for these early childhood profiles is actually coming from this past year when 109 school districts implemented the screener voluntarily. So that's where we're getting our data from. That's going to be released soon to give us some of the preliminary data and as well as some lessons learned. It's very important that we help people understand what this is really all about, that a screener is just a moment in time. If you think about it as being a picture, it's a snapshot of a child's development. It is not, and I'm going to say that one more time, it is not an entrance exam for kindergarten, because all age-eligible children will and can go to kindergarten once they meet that age requirement. The screener is supposed to be used by teachers to best meet the needs of that child and their class collectively, so that they gather this information and they use that to help meet those teaching strategies, meet the children where they are when they come to them. It is not to be used to track the children, label the children, or group the children in any way. So, okay, so now that we're all on the same page, you've got the history of the screener, you've got what it's supposed to be, and we're going to get the data in our profiles. Now what? The question is, so what? So what are councils supposed to do to support our community? And how are they supposed to do that? Well, as Amanda pointed out in the beginning, professional development is one avenue for this, one of those building blocks, right? First and foremost, we can start helping families, educators, and everyone understand what the screener is supposed to be and what it is not supposed to be. Community early childhood councils can also be an advocate by looking at our data and determining if there are areas or gaps in certain areas that may help children be more ready for school. On this slide, you'll see two areas that are circled in red. The one on the left is where you're going to find your local screener data. Okay, that's where you'll find what's happening locally. Denoting where children scored in the different developmental domains and those sorts of things. And the second red circle on the right actually shows your community data, talking about regulated child care, STARS participation, and then the professional development of your local early childhood workforce, okay? So what we can do is by taking in this data, we can determine if there are any areas of concern or gaps in your local community, and if so, can we determine then why those gaps are there or why those areas are lower. When it comes to the screening data, we have to think about what children are being given the opportunity to do and discover during those first 5 years. For example, if the scores are below average, the state average in the area of cognitive or general knowledge, we might look at what opportunities there are available to the children. Have they been given the opportunities to explore and discover numbers? If not, then maybe the community early childhood councils could provide those professional development opportunities for families and teachers and child care providers on fun math, how you can explore numbers in a developmentally appropriate way and make it fun for the children while they learn. Another example might be social-emotional, separation anxiety. Are families or parent members, are they concerned about the fact that their child doesn't separate easily from them when they have to leave them somewhere? If so, maybe the community early childhood councils could offer or sponsor opportunities for training on how to handle that, or even socialization opportunities so that children have that practice before they're just left at the door that first day. It's also important to remember that school readiness doesn't just begin when a child turns 4 years old. It begins with infants. Does your community recognize the importance of those early years for the youngest children? Are those young children being given the opportunity to feed themselves, drink from a cup, get dressed, all of those sorts of things? These are things that children should be allowed to do, even if it turns out to be a little bit messy. They need to do this so that they're building their self-help skills. And professional development is a way of helping everyone who cares for children to know what's okay for children to do while they keep them safe. As for the community data, it can also help us determine professional development needs of the workforce. Again, remembering that councils have the opportunity to support various initiatives that we've already mentioned. So with this in mind, our next slide will show you, ready to grow, ready to learn, and ready to succeed. That's our school readiness definition. But the councils can actually use these profiles to determine where the communities are successful, what opportunities still need to be discovered, and how to leverage these community assets. We have to remember, not all children are in some type of a regulated setting or a preschool setting. Maybe that's because a parent has chosen to stay home with their children. That's their choice. That's fine. Maybe it's because there aren't any regulated providers in your area, and in our area we have some of those counties that don't have regulated providers. Maybe the children are staying at home with family or friends or neighbors. But what we need to do is raise that awareness, making sure that everybody understands what it takes to be ready for school. What does it mean? And it's not just always the ABCs, but all of these other things we've talked about. What does it mean? And do they understand how to help children be ready? So our community early childhood councils can begin that with our definition for school readiness, and that's a great resource for us. Albert, I'm going to ask you if you have any comments or to make about the data or strategies before we move on. Or
I think we're ready to move to the next slide, Amy, which basically is a illustration of the concepts you've just been discussing. If you look at first of all, how we have done professional development in the past. In the years past, when the councils began, every single topic was important, every single topic was needed. And now, we're very fortunate because we're going to have the community profiles. We're going to have some screener data, and this is going to enable us to work smarter than we've been able to work in the past, because we're going to have some guidance. And if you look at this illustration, you'll see the community priorities and the screener data listed. But we've also got on here federal and state priorities, because if you work with a Head Start program, you know that you've got federal priorities that must be met. If you have licensing guidelines you must meet, you know what those are. And if you're in preschool programs, there's KDE and preschool guidelines, which are required by the state as well. So all these things are basically information pieces which give you a needs-based priority for determining what topics and what areas you need to be thinking in terms of presenting for your community, and based upon the information which Amy just gave you. Now, we've discussed in the little box over here to the right, we have on the illustration an effective delivery system. And you'll three dots under that: core content, training, technical assistance, coaching credential, and trainer competencies. These three are our three work groups, which are subgroups under our ECCC professional development work group. And we have co-chairs on each of these three committees. And they are working to come up with some ideas about how training, what competencies need to be improved, how to embed core content so that it's more useful and user-friendly, and whether or not how we may approach the concept of mentoring and coaching, and what technical assistance looks like, and possibly even developing a credential that would be used in Kentucky to illustrate that point. And then if you look at the bottom of the page, you see these circles, and these are the people who would be receiving the professional development. We're going to be talking about these groups in a few more minutes. Now, I want to call special attention to the box on the left, which emphasizes with the arrow the feedback from the field. In order to be a good professional development system, we have to have feedback from those who are being trained, those who are being mentored, those who are being coached, those who are being brought into the realm of professional development. And between our data and the professional development plan of those individuals, this will be a very helpful model. Next slide.
So we've looked at the logic model. We've talked about all of the different the profiles and the screener data, but now we want to talk about who else, like Albert pointed out. Who are these people who need early childhood professional development? And we've listed some folks up here on our slide. I'm sure that there are some others, but the first one that, you know, we think about and talk about are those licensed center employees who are working to meet those state requirements to get the hours of training that they have to have in order to be compliant with state regulations, as well as to meet up with their professional development plans.
Another circle listed here is preschool aides. Many of these preschool aides are working toward a child development associate because they want to meet the NEAR benchmark, which the NEAR benchmark, as you all know, under NEAR, is that all preschool aides would have the minimum of a CDA. And needless to say, as you all know, Kentucky has a 9 score on the NEAR. In order to be a 10, the one benchmark that has not been met is for preschool aides who work in child care, who work in preschool programs would have the benchmark of a CDA.
Great. The other one, family child care home providers who are trying to meet state regulations, and again, along with them and licensed center employees, thinking about the credentials, the requirements that are required to meet stars, because as we climb the ladder to the stars, each star requires different and more training opportunities for owners, directors, and that sort of thing. So we want to think about those folks as well.
The fourth one, which we have listed up here, is family and consumer science students. This is, you know, kind of a passion of mine because it's so important, especially those of you who have child care centers and who do have preschool programs, that you think in terms of as your workers start to retire, who is going to replace them? And we have a wonderful opportunity by having the Commonwealth Child Care credential that many of our high school students are coming out with a certificate of eligibility for the Commonwealth Child Care, and many of them are taking additional hours to make sure that they are eligible for a CDA. And so many of these high school students may be very interested in your professional development that your council offers, because it gives them an opportunity to put information into their resource files and to work on some of their high school assignments. Plus, it's an ideal opportunity for them to network, and in many cases, some of them may come and actually want to do hours in your child care center or preschool or Head Start programs.
That's right, and that's so exciting, too, because that means they're coming out not only career ready, but also college ready for doing that extra work, so that's great. Head Start and early Head Start teachers and teacher aides also have not only the state regulations that they must meet, but there are also federal mandates that get put down on them that says within certain time frames, certain requirements must be met. So professional development, in addition to those regular training hours, are necessary for that staff in order to meet those federal mandates.
I know many of y'all are looking at things and thinking, oh, well, we left out 2 or 3, and this is good, and I'm going to add 1 or 2, and then Amy, I think you have a couple more that we've just put up there. I was thinking in terms of community early childhood council members who are seeking to gain more knowledge and skills within their community. A lot of council members, there's topics they don't know that much about, and they might be wanting to attend some of these professional development opportunities.
That's right. That's right. They are interested. And then the other one that I'm thinking about are family members or parents who are just wanting to gain more information themselves about activities or things that they can do at home to help their child grow and reach their potential, and advocacy skills. As we talked about the who, we'll also look at the why, okay? So we know who needs it. Now let's think about why communities need these ongoing professional development. And a lot of times what we will think about is The STARS ratings, we've talked a little bit about that, where the STAR ratings are tied to credentials and training opportunities. So making sure that they're there, and you'll see that STARS rating there. So in essence, it's not really tied just to the credential, but also if they're learning about other things, environments and those sorts of things, it also helps in their environmental rating score scale.
I really like this slide because it gives us a chance to really think in terms of a lot of different components that are all tied together as puzzle parts coming together to create a whole progressive picture. But I'm looking here at the word common professional language. When we first began our work with Kids Now, we discovered that everybody was pretty much using different languages. And our child care centers did not have really the professional language to be speaking to school systems, and sometimes Head Start had their own language. And what we have discovered is when we start bringing people together and they have professional development together, and oftentimes it needs to be on different tier levels. We all know that there's Type 1 and Type 2 trainings as well as 3 and 4, but nevertheless, the same points can be made can be emphasized to where everybody has the same common professional language, which will actually lead to partnerships in many cases. But one of the things that I want to emphasize again, that this is an opportunity for those schools who want to reach that benchmark for NEAR as an opportunity for them to do just that through using these hours.
Yes, I think that's right, and using all of those hours to gain the different credentials and those sorts of things. I really think that it's important, too, to think about those quality environments and actually also professional images that set folks aside when we think about when the teachers, providers, family child care home providers go into training, they actually it allows them to create a professional image for themselves. It also allows them to be recognized in their community, which will allow them to create more quality environments for the children, the families they serve, and other staff members that they're working with.
This can also encourage professional partnership between Head Start programs and preschool and as well as child care. And it also becomes, as your providers become more knowledgeable and more skilled, it ensures a feeder system of knowledgeable students for the college classes.
That's right, and you all see there the high-quality environments. You know, we keep talking about that. We keep talking about high quality, enhancing our scores, all of those, enhancing professional development. That's because we know that when all the Kentucky children are in quality environments, they're going to be ready for school and ready to succeed. We also think about what professional development is needed, and we determine what is needed by these three things that you're seeing on your slide. First of all, we want to make sure that we are staying up to date on the state and the federal priorities. That means that we can look to the state and the federal priorities to see what do these folks need to know, what's happening, what's new, what's the hot topic. You know, that helps us know what type of training needs to be offered within our community. We will also turn to the early childhood profiles and the kindergarten readiness screener data that we've already talked about today, using that information to help us determine what professional development is needed. And there's something else that I mentioned earlier, but we haven't spent a lot of time talking about, and I know that in our state-regulated child care programs, our family child care homes, our Head Start programs, almost everybody that works with children, I'm sure preschool programs have it as well, and that is a professional development plan. Every individual person working with children is required by some mandate, state regulation or federal regulation, to have an individualized professional development plan. And that's the key. We really want to make sure that people get what they need or what they want, not something that's just offered because it's going to meet your hours or it's nearby or it's easy to access. But really, what can we do to help people get what they truly need? So what we can do is look to our local community folks, looking at their PD plans, their professional development plans, to help us determine what is it that they are needing, what is it that they are wanting to help us do that. So we need to remember to use our community partners to plan and schedule training. So we've got the who and the what and the why. So now let's focus, Albert, for a little bit on how we find these trainers. And I'm just going to start out with the Child Care Aware training coordinators. The Child Care Aware staff have folks who are dedicated to training coordination. These people should be on your community early childhood councils, and if they are not part of your membership, you need to figure out who that person is in your area and get them on your council, because they can really help you determine what's needed, who's around, and those sorts of things. That's part of their job. We also have to remember to use those resources that are right there with us in our community. Do we have local training organizations that are near us, community colleges? Who's in our community that we can work with that can offer community-based training that's quality and will work to help meet the needs that we've already determined are there?
It's a real temptation to, when you're trying to meet your state-required hours, to think in terms of where can I get the cheapest online training that will count. But one of the advantages of having some local ongoing training is that people get to know each other and they get to form networks. And they also form relationships from being in training situations with each other, and then they know each other. So if you have a concern issue, or in some instances people may be wanting to change jobs, they have a network which is really available in the community. And it's really exciting when these local networks begin to become regional networks. One of the things that we have put down here is the regulation that says one can use a non-credentialed trainer for up to 5 times per year. Now, we put the regulation on here so people could refer to it. And you also have to keep in mind that this training would have to be approved by the Division of Child Care. It would have to go through the process. But it's an opportunity for you guys to recruit people in your community who you know are knowledgeable and have the ability to train well. And sometimes you have to go out and really talk these people into doing it as a community service piece, because a lot of them have a lot of talents and yet they're not aware of it. But in many cases, fresh trainers will invigorate not only the people who are being trained, but it will also invigorate the people who are in the trenches every day working with young children and all that hard work which is involved, for them to be able to basically show all their knowledge and get some opportunities to get some positive feedback from others who are wanting to learn from them. So I suggest you check not only child care directors or other people who may be knowledgeable, but your preschool teachers, and your Head Start always has a wealth of knowledgeable people who can hopefully ultimately become credentialed trainers after they get some opportunities and some experience behind them. I would also encourage you to go after and recruit family and consumer science teachers. Look at it from their perspective. They're looking for directors who may have a preschool or Head Start programs who might be willing to place some of their high school students. For this reason, they need to know the landscape of the local child care community and the Head Start directors and directors of centers as well as preschool programs, and they need to know all these people. And this would be a good opportunity to bring many of these people into the fold of trainers in your community.
That's right, Albert. And again, look into all those local people to get ideas. There's a lot of people out there who are doing things that we just don't think about, and they may not know about the trainer credential and those sorts of things. So spreading the word is important, right? We can also find trainers and training sessions that are available to us by using the TRIS system, the Early Childhood Education Training Registry Information System. They actually have a public calendar of trainings that are available across the state. If you access this by going to this website, you can actually do a search for training, training by area, training by type, or even by date. So that's a good resource for folks to be able to use too to find trainers. Also, Albert mentioned once those non-credentialed trainers, if they submit, and they get registered and approved by the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, then you can actually visit their website, and again, that's given to you there on the slide, to receive a state-approved training list. So you can see the types of training that's been approved, whether it be a national event or something there within your state. That's where that will show up, and you can visit that as well. As we change slides, one of the other things that we would like to talk to folks about is core content and CDA subject areas, and we mentioned to you at the beginning of the call that we'd be talking a little bit more about how to plan and align that. I'm going to take just a minute to talk about the core content here and set the stage just a little bit. But what happened was with the Kids Now initiative several years ago, there was a work group that talked about what are the things, what are the core areas that a person working with young children needs to know, and thus we came up with the core content. And what we actually have in Kentucky is 7 different areas of core content. They're labeled right there across your slide there in the gray. You will see health, safety, and nutrition, learning environments and curriculum, family community partnerships, the program management piece, the professional development piece, child assessment, and finally child growth and development. Those are the 7 core content areas that we identify here in Kentucky and that training is aligned with and planned with when we're offering training sessions. And what happened was we looked at that when the Commonwealth Child Care Credential was developed and looked at the number of hours. That's why there are numbers on this grid here. You will see that there are so many hours required within each of those core content areas to equal 60 hours of core content to earn the Commonwealth Child Care Credential. So just to give you a little bit of history, that's where the core content comes from, and that's how we align training here in Kentucky. And Albert, I'm going to let you talk about the CDA and why this is so important for community early childhood councils to understand.
First of all, I want to say that CDA is changing many things. I don't think they're changing this, but this is something we need to be aware that they are in a process of change of their process. What I want to emphasize is with a Commonwealth Child Care Credential, all 60 hours must be taught as a planned program of study because those are building blocks upon building blocks. But the CDA is not like that. You have like 5 years from beginning to end to work through to gather your professional development hours. They're very specific in terms of what hours will count toward the 120 required. They must be. And I want y'all to turn to your books and CDA books and look at the requirements on page, I believe it's page 11. What they will say is it must be under the umbrella of an organization which has skills and is able to provide professional development. And among those that are listed is school systems, Head Start, colleges, resource and referral organizations, and there's several others, military, I believe. And I want to emphasize to you that since your council has members from representing many of these organizations, if you're able to get them in as co-sponsors and be able to put them down as co-sponsors, partners in this training, those hours will count towards CDA. Now, why is this important? Everybody is required to get 15 hours per year to meet the state requirements. After 5 years, you have a large number of hours toward this. And for those people who see the possibility that they could be even working toward these more quickly, then they begin to see how that professional development can work together to meet those 120 hours. So I would encourage you all to be savvy, and I know a lot of your councils have been doing this from the very first training that they did 10 years ago. But in many places, not everybody has done this, so we really want to emphasize that that might be something you want to consider. Now, why is it important if people are able to obtain the CDA? Because it is a nationally, internationally recognized credential, and in Kentucky, it articulates to 9 college hours at KCTCS. It also articulates to several other colleges, and I'm not sure what those hours are, so I don't want to name any of them that I'm not familiar with. But the major one there is 9 hours at KCTCS system. Now, another thing I want to take an opportunity to say one more time is, if you have trainings and you have large numbers of people in there, some have just been working in child care for 2 weeks, some may be high school students, and others may be master's degree level, 20 years of teaching background. You may have to think in terms of training levels from 1 through 4, so that everybody will know basically what the expectations are and what level of understanding and background one will have to be able to participate with this training for the maximum benefit.
That's great, Albert. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that you're right. There are a lot of councils who have been doing that. They've been contracting with local organizations, but there's always opportunity to do a lot more of that because not everybody has been. So good information. I think it is very important for all of us to remember that when we are planning for professional development, there are some things to always remember. That ongoing professional development requires a lot of time. It does take time to strategically plan. As you can see, we've talked about all of the resources for gathering data and collecting data and looking for who can do it and who needs to be there and all of those sorts of things. So it does take a lot of time and knowledge to strategically plan to meet for your to meet what's needed there in your community. And it will also take you some time to get systems in place. But wow, what a great system we have if we plan strategically enough to be able to promote that CDA credentialing process within the training that we're able to offer locally. And always remembering, you know, that when we work together, we can do a whole lot more with less. When we have more people that look at it, the more people that talk about it, the less the less time, the less money it takes. But when we all work together as a team, it's really important.
And again, Amy, I want to emphasize that each community is different. We really need to think in terms that each community is going to require individualization. And it takes time to build ongoing systems. And sometimes you have a couple of people in your community and then they move and it gives you a setback because their knowledge and skills were great. So you have to rethink this as communities over a period of time, but we keep building and going forward. But we need to think in terms of the individualization and not basically compare our council to the work of other councils in this term, because each one is individualized for its needs.
And finally, just to bring it all back around to the very beginning, we always want to remember that professional development is only one part of our overall outcome strategy to increase school readiness. So it's only one tool in the toolbox to make sure that our kids in Kentucky go to school, enter kindergarten ready every year. I would like to thank Albert Fox and Dr. Amy Hood-Hooten for joining us this afternoon. I think that this has been a very informative conversation, and it will be an ongoing conversation that we will anticipate seeing more at on the Institute this coming March. So thanks, everyone, for participating. We hope to hear from you soon.
Thank you, Albert.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.